Yeah. Let me give you one.
Well, I have two in there.
Then you won't have to. That's fine. They understand that. You can hang on to it. Did you send him something already? No. Nope. That's counter. Thank you very much.
Did you see how they shared? He was inspired by her. He's like, she didn't win, but I'm gonna win the first one.
No, I think I don't think I'm gonna get necessary. I'm just gonna reference it and anybody Oh, good. Good. Full house. That was good.
Ready to roll? All right.
Good evening, everybody. I have 7:30, so I'm going to go ahead and call this. I would ask that you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, if you could call the roll, members, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Valentine.
Here.
Ms. Graham.
Here.
Ms. Diaz.
Here.
Mr. Rivera.
Here.
Mr. Smith-Waddell.
Here.
Mr. Soto.
Here.
President Reichenbach.
Here. Approval of the minutes for the
Second.
motion is second. Council comments from the public. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Valentine.
Aye.
Ms. Graham.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Rivera.
Aye.
Mr. Smith-Waddell.
Aye.
Mr. Soto.
Aye.
President Reichenbach.
Aye. Proclamations, honors, awards, and excuse me, resolutions of recognition. Mayor, looks like we have Rosalind Dickinson for January's Neighbor of the Month.
Yes, we do. Rosalind, you want to come up, please? Amber, are we?
I don't have
Yes,
them,
okay,
I'm sorry.
So Rosalind, we are going to circle back with you with that actual proclamation and your downtown dollars. And I'm going to apologize now that in all of the hubbub of getting the State of the City report, it was left upstairs. So, however, I want to personally thank you, and you were nominated by your team and SOE for the work that you do in your neighborhood every day, doing things that are not asked of you, showing up and being such a contributor to the neighborhood. So you are our January Neighbor of the Month, and we are so honored to recognize your efforts and thank you very, very much. Congratulations. But I just got through doing the State of the City report and talking about strong neighborhoods, and you are what makes strong neighborhoods. So thank you so much, Rosalind. Okay, your time, please.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here this evening. This is all new to me, so I wrote a little bit down. Thank you for the award. I want to thank God, first of all. I want to thank the SOE neighbors for their support and their cooperation. And I'd like to thank the SOE director, Jake Thorson. Thank you.
Yay.
Congratulations again, ma'am, and thank you, Mayor, for this. It's been a wonderful ride this past year to recognize so many people who contribute so much. Move on to public comment period. This is our first public comment period. It's been reserved for citizens who contacted the city clerk prior to the meeting to request an opportunity to address council. Mr. Harris, do we have anybody to call ahead this evening?
No, we do not, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to reports requested by council. I don't believe we have any this evening. I also don't believe we have any interim reports of committees of council. So that being said, we will move right into the legislative agenda. Ordinances for final passage. Administration Bill number 19, 2018.
Yes, Mr. President. An ordinance authorizing the incurrence of non-electoral debt of the city of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, by the issuance of principal amounts of general obligation bonds, series of 2019, issued for the purpose of providing financing for the cost of refunding all the city's outstanding general obligation notes, series of 2009, and paying costs of issuance incurred with the 2019 bonds, approving the refunding and authorizing the redemption of the outstanding 2009 notes, determining to settle the 2019 bonds at a private sale by negotiation or invitation, approving the form of the 2019 bonds, fixing the date, interest, and maturity of the 2019 bonds, making a covenant for the payment of the debt service of the 2019 bonds, pledging the full faith, credit, and taxing power of this city in support of the 2019 bonds, providing for the filing of required documents, providing for the appointment of a sinking fund depository for the 2019 bonds, otherwise providing for the refunding of the 2009 notes, and authorizing execution, sale, and delivery thereof, and other necessary actions. Title, Mr. President.
Quite the type. Well done, Mr. Harris. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Councilman Valentine.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we discussed this last time, there was a delay in the, with this bill, as Mr. Hopkins was waiting for interest rates, so I believe he has an update for us.
Mr. Hopkins, I assume you have good news for us this evening.
I do. I'll give provide some information here on the auction that we had this morning. Darrell Peck from Concord Public Finance will be handing out some information that he'll then talk about. So we had just a quick bit of history. Obviously, we had the note proposal from Fulton Bank that we had good through a couple of weeks ago, and then got extended with the delay that we ran into a couple of weeks ago. On the auction side of this, Fulton Bank's proposal was good until tomorrow, actually extended a little bit longer out past tomorrow. This morning, we held the online bond auction. We've talked about this process a few times before, but essentially it's an online auction, much like eBay for municipal bonds. We had a total of, I believe, 10 bidders who were logged into the auction. Ultimately, we ended up having 6 financial institutions that submitted bids during the auction, and those 6 bidders submitted a total of 18 bids. During the auction itself, it's a very short period of time. It's a 15-minute auction. This morning it turned into about a 5-minute auction because nobody bid for the first 10 minutes, which over the years I've gotten used to just sort of sitting back and waiting for things to come through. We had the first bid that came in a little after 11:10. The second bid, actually, and I have the rundown of these bids if anybody would like them. Usually aren't that many people actually interested in the auction process itself, just the result. But the second bid ended up being the winning bid. With the Fulton Bank note, which represented a savings of about $1 million over with the refinancing. That was a blended rate of a fixed and a variable rate that worked out to like 3.38%. The winning bid that we got in the auction this morning was 2.539%. So about a 25% reduction in the interest rate itself. And while it's a 25% reduction in the interest rate, the total savings is actually about double what we got from would have gotten through the Fulton Bank note proposal. So rather than $1 million savings, we're actually going to see about $2 million of savings with this refinancing. And to give you an idea of how close these auction numbers can be, the difference between the winning bidder and the second place bidder was 0.0000968%. So they go out to 6 decimal places. So that second bidder got extraordinarily close, but not quite close enough. So I'm going to turn this over to Darrell in a second, but just to talk about the refinancing savings themselves. This was a bond issue that funded projects in the general fund, the sewer fund, and the water fund. So that $2 million of savings is not just in the general fund. It's split among those 3 funds. And the breakdown works out to about $840,000 savings in the general fund. And this is actually savings that we will see in 2019 and then in 2020. And Darrell will talk about that a little bit. The sewer fund savings is about $430,000, and that will all come in 2019. And then the water fund savings is about a little under $740,000. And again, that savings is primarily in 2019, but some of that falls into 2020. So all in all, very good results out of the auction. The 2-week delay, just talking about that before the meeting, we don't think it really did any great favors to us. It also didn't hurt us at all. So, that delay in terms of the transparency and the reporting that we talked about in the last meeting was a good idea. But the end result that we got out of this auction was obviously very nice, doubling the savings that we would have gotten out of the Fulton Bank note. And with that, let me turn it over to Darrell so he can talk about the information that he handed out.
Thank you, Patrick. Good evening, members of council and mayor. Certainly, Patrick already touched on most of this. I'll talk a little bit about the handout. Real quickly though, what was provided to you, and I always do point this out, was what's called the preliminary official statement. I believe that Attorney Harris had provided this to you. A lot of good information in there. Sometime when you just want to do some research on the city, if you will, economic, demographic information, nighttime reading. But that is the offering document, if you will, that's used to market bonds. We certainly moved quickly as we could. Took the opportunity when interest rates are low. These 2009 bonds come up for refinancing now, and we got this teed up, and I think we started talking about this probably. So I was talking with Patrick, back in October and November, and I think we started the process with council in November. So we do want to sort of keep you prepped on what's coming and when we can move forward in an efficient manner. So with that, the handout that I handed out, Patrick alluded to most of this, but the first page is the summary of the bids that we got, showing that Citigroup offered the best proposal at 2.539%. As he already alluded to, the next bid was very, very tight or very close to that. The highest interest rate offered was 2.85%, so that's 0.31% difference from the high to low. Again, why you go through the process of the competitive nature of the auction. The difference between a high and low is about $400,000. So when we talk about saving $2 million, at what was the worst, if you will, or the highest rate offered, saving would have been about $1.6 million. So that's what that equates to in dollars and cents, which is very important to the city. Of the 6 bidders, 6 firms that submitted bids, some of these firms often work in the syndicate or group of underwriters, and those are listed here. So there's about 28 firms that were involved in the bidding for these bonds because of how some of them work in groups, and the 18 bids that we got. On page 1 with the blue box in it, this is a presentation of the savings that, again, Patrick already alluded to. Of the $24 million in bonds that are refunded, you'll generate about $800,000 of savings in the general fund, split as $500,000 in 2019 and about $300,000 in 2020. In the sewer fund, the whole $430,000 of savings will all be achieved in the current fiscal year of 2019. In the water fund, a total of $740,000 of savings, about $600,000 will be achieved in 2019, and the remaining $160,000 will be received in 2020, with a sum total of the $2 million in the far right-hand side. So that's how the savings will be achieved, or when you realize the savings. And again, those savings are in the form of reduced payments. Not one of these cash out refinancings that you sometimes hear about. So the city will ultimately pay less than it otherwise would have paid. That savings of $2 million represents a little over 8% of refunded principal. If you remember this, usually the threshold of when does it make sense to move forward, that number is 3% or higher. So clearly, at $2 million, it makes sense to move forward. But that's just sort of the end of this test for you. And see how significantly we did better than that. On page 2 is the customary sources and uses. These are broken out. We did sell one series of bonds, but this shows the allocation of the general fund portion, the sewer fund portion, and the water fund portion of the entire $22 million in bonds to pay off the 2009 bonds and their related costs. And those costs are included in the refinancing, and all the savings we're quoting to you are net of those related costs. So it's a net $2 million of savings for the city. On page 3 is the existing 2009 bonds are being paid off over the 10-year period. Here's where the real savings is, of course. The rates on those bonds range from 3.75% to 4.875%. So we're going to trade those in for page 4 for the issue of $22 million. Focus the rate. The effective rate is the yield, the bolded, column 14. So the rates on the new bonds range from 1.85% to 2.73%. Blending those is how you get to the blended rate or the all-in rate of 2.539%. So there it is. On the in the far right, you see that the new debt service compared to the existing debt service is your $2 million of savings. With that, I'll entertain any questions. Otherwise, I guess we'll move forward with consider moving forward with the ordinance, which among other things would accept the proposal or the bid from the city group.
Thank you, Darrell. And just to clarify, that rate is fixed through the loan, even though it's a blended rate.
Correct. They are fixed rate bonds, which is names of things.
Wonderful. Love to hear that. Yes. Thank you. Any council members have any questions for Darrell while he's up here before we move on to the amendment? Okay, if not, thank you, sir. Thank you again for all your
Thank
work. You have served us very well the last several years, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Captain.
Yeah, sure. Councilman Valentine?
Thank you, Mr. President. Bond council has provided each of us with a black line version of the ordinance authorizing and directing the issuance of the City of Lancaster General Obligation Bond Series 2019 in an original principal amount equal to $22,140,000. Such ordinance was introduced as Administrative Bill Number 19, 2018, before this council on November 27, 2018. I hereby move to amend the ordinance labeled Administrative Bill Number 19, 2018, to include the additions, deletions, and other changes referenced on such black line versions of the ordinance, which will be reworded with the minutes of this meeting and which can be summarized as follows. In the caption of the ordinance, inserting the amount of $22,140,000. In the third and fifth whereas clauses, inserting the amount of $22,140,000. Inserting into the sixth whereas clause the name Citigroup Global Markets Incorporated as the purchaser and the date of January 22, 2019 as the date of purchaser's proposal for the purchase of the 2019 bonds. In section 1 of the ordinance, inserting the amount of $22,140,000 as the amount of indebtedness authorized by the ordinance. In section 7 of the ordinance, inserting the date of February 26, 2019 as the 2019 bonds will be issued. In section 10 of the ordinance, deleting the phrase, quote, or be subject to mandatory redemption, unquote, in the first paragraph, and deleting the paragraphs referring to the early redemption of the 2019 bonds. In section 23 of the ordinance, inserting the date January 22, 2019 as the date of preliminary official statement. On Exhibit A, the form of bond inserting $22,410,000 as the aggregate principal amount of the 2019 bonds throughout, and deleting the paragraphs referring to the early redemption of the 2019 bonds. On Exhibit B, attaching the amortization schedule for the 2019 bonds, and on Exhibit C, attaching a copy of the proposal of the purchaser has been attached to the ordinance as Exhibit C.
Second. We have a motion and a second. This will simply be a vote on the amendment, not on the bill itself. That will follow. The positive vote goes with the amendment. So do we have any council comments on that amendment? From the public? Just on the amendment? Mr. Brown, do you have a comment on this specific amendment? Okay. You could just share your...
I got a question. When the clerk says private, is this a private organization or not? He mentioned private.
Private.
When he was reading it out, he said private, and read it down more. Is this a private organization or not?
I'm not sure what section you're referring to, Mr. Brown.
I'm going with the clerk read out what he read.
Not a private sale by negotiation or invitation. That was the option that was held this morning.
I was going from the private, but see, you didn't pronounce it which way, how it said down the line.
All right, well, it looks like we have a response for it if you want. Thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you, everybody. I'm Sean Frederick, Bond Counsel. It references private invited sale, which refers to the process. So that means through the underwriting process, there were organizations invited in. So that's when they discussed the 12 or 10 organizations that submitted a proposal, that was the process. So that was a reference to private. That's the only reference to private.
And that comes from 24.4 or less?
I'm not sure.
22,140,000.
Or less. Okay.
Yeah, the amount of the sale of bonds is $22,140,000.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, that's the amount, the principal amount that we bond, $22,400,000.
Mr. Brown, if you want to continue that conversation at your seat, that would be great. But
It's the same thing I'm saying.
no, I understand. I appreciate your
22,
time.
right? How you get 24?
Oh, Mr. Brown, the original, sorry, Mr. President.
No, please.
The original principal amount is $24,390,000, and the proposed amendment and then vote on the bond refinancing will drop the principal
I
amount.
got it.
Thank you, Councilman. Clarifying. Thank you, bond counsel, for sharing the information. Any other comments from the public on the amendment itself? If not, again, this is just a vote on the amendment. Mr. Harris?
Mr. Valentine.
Aye.
Ms. Gregg.
All right.
Ms. Diaz. Mr. Rivera.
Aye.
Mr. Smith-Wato.
Aye.
Mr. Soto.
Aye.
President Reagan.
Aye. And now we will move on to a vote on the amended ordinance, amended Administration Bill Number 19, 2018. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any council comments on the amended ordinance from the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris?
Mr. Valentine.
Aye.
Ms. Gregg.
All right.
Ms. Diaz. Mr. Rivera.
Aye.
Mr. Smith-Wato.
Aye.
Mr. Soto.
Aye.
President Reagan.
Aye. I just want to thank Mr. Hopkins again and bond counsel and also the mayor for making this a priority. These are really unique ways that we're able to save taxpayers money and utilize that long term. So it's much appreciated. So thank you. Yeah, of course, I always thank you. You already got thanked when he was up here. But no, all kidding aside, $2 million is a lot of money. And over the course of the bond issue, that is a significant portion of help that we can offer residents in a lot of different ways. So it matters. And this isn't the first time you've done it over the last few years. So thank you. It's appreciated. We'll move into public comment period. This is the second public comment. This is open for issues or concerns that were not on tonight's agenda. And I would ask that you limit the duration of your comments to 3 minutes. Do we have anybody who would like to comment on anything this evening, not on the agenda?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Mr. Brown.
Pastor Kevin Brown, 223 West Orange Street. I just wanted to thank City Council for allowing us to address the issue of the Lancaster Regional UPMC Hospital and its the issue of its closing. I wanted to say that when we get into situations like this, where we are trying to be a voice for the public, especially those that are indigent here in Lancaster, that it is not personal, that we have not directed anything at anyone personally. We're very concerned about how the city is going to be represented to the people that are residents here and to the people who make Lancaster what Lancaster is. And to those people, it seems that Lancaster is becoming a city that is conducive to people who have means and people who are rich, and that the poor are being left behind. And that's not good. It's not good for a city that is diverse, as Lancaster, Pennsylvania is, and a city where people like Nelson Polite and many of the people who did hard work, your mother, and people who have done some hard work here in this city. I've been in this city for 21 years, and I've seen people, Reverend Bailey, several people come and advocate for people who are poor and disenfranchised in this city. This city only having 2 hospitals, to remove one is unconscionable. And I know that there's something that city government can say, and there's something that they can do to try to pressure and press UPMC into making another choice. It seems that, what's happening has a lot to do with geopolitics and to corporate greed, and we cannot afford to let the poor and disenfranchised think that certainly its government and the good people here in Lancaster are leaving their concerns behind. So thank you very much for listening these last few weeks, and I pray that you'll continue to help the people here in Lancaster to take advantage of the economic development and the things that Lancaster is trying to do to make this a better city. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Any other public comments? Hearing none, we'll move to the report of the mayor.
I think I gave my report earlier this evening with the State of the City address. Just one note, I will be representing the City of Lancaster at the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C. Tomorrow through Friday, and I look forward to sharing with all of you what I've learned.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report this evening. Do we have any council comments?
If I may just briefly, sir, because her retirement party was last Friday, I just want to take a moment to recognize Paula Jackson's 48 years of service to the city of Lancaster. There was a lovely retirement party for her here last Friday, but in my year on council, the thing that I most liked about Paula, that I think that she exemplified that we could all learn from, is that Paula would always listen. Paula had time for everyone, which included me, and not always did we agree, but Paula, it seemed, had particularly had time to listen to people that she happened to disagree with, which I think is a spirit we could all carry forward into the next year. So I just wanted to put her name out there before we closed for the evening, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Smith-Wato, and I would certainly second that. At 7 years on council, I can't list the number of questions I had for Ms. Jackson, and for her ability to change and stay up with the times and modern practices. I mean, 40 years is a long time. There's been a lot of changes in her department over those years, and her willingness to continue to morph and change and learn new ideas is unique. You don't get that all the time, so we're blessed to have her, for sure. Any other comments? Hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thanks for coming out this evening, everybody.
Nice to meet you.